So welcome everybody. My name is Jim Burgin, and I am going to talk about usable lean. And I'll talk a little bit about usable lean and what it means here in a minute, at least from my way of thinking. But as a short introduction, and Mindy was kind enough to put very nice words out there about me, but really I'm an MSOM instructor. I have been for about 7 years. I teach quality management, I teach maintenance management, and I'm teaching one of our really, really interesting courses, new courses called Organizing for Change. And I do see a couple of my students out there, so I guess I have friends in the room. So let's talk a little bit about usable lean for a second. And I'm going to try to take, I'll just leave myself down in the lower left-hand corner. So they came to me and they said, well, what do you, I said, well, I want to talk about lean management or lean manufacturing, lean management and all that stuff. And they said, man, that's pretty boring, or at least I thought it was boring. So they said, well, put a little life in it. Okay, so we'll talk about usable lean. So usable lean, I'm just going to tell you a bunch of stories about what I've seen out there, and I may make it so that you can understand a little bit better when we start talking about just-in-time inventory and those type of things. So let us move on here. And by the way, we will have questions at the end of this, and I'm going to go for about 45 minutes, I hope, and then you can start putting questions into the chat box, and I will be more than glad to attempt to answer them. Okay, so this lean is kind of a big thing. There's all kinds of books out there. I mean, I'm not sure I've ever seen 2-second lean, but the lean turnaround is very important. And then you've got really the Bible of lean up there, at least from my way of thinking, in a book that I recommend an awful lot, and that's the Toyota Way. And then you go, and that is, Toyota is the, you know, they are the granddaddy of doing lean out there. And people say, well, why should I come to lean, Burgin? It's not really usable for anything but out there in the heavy-duty manufacturing area. Not true, folks, not true at all. You got a book there that says Lean Office and Services Simplified. Hey, I will tell you right now that Starbucks coffee, McDonald's, Taco Bell, they're all using pieces of lean throughout their operations. And as they add more and more, the service will get better, and certainly they're competing for your business out there. Now I'm going to get to one more area here called Lean Six Sigma. Well, and I got into a discussion with a friend of mine that's a black belt in Six Sigma, and I said, why do they put these two things together? And I said, well, you know, they kind of came around at the same time, and they're good buzzwords for business and those type of things. So, you know, I said, and he said, wait a minute, Burgin, you don't know what you're talking about. You got to have Six Sigma if you're going to have lean. And he made the point. Now, he defended his black belt very well, but he said, you got to know if your process is under control. You've got to know if your process is capable. And I'll give him his due on that. But you can separate lean and you can separate out Six Sigma. And people go, well, what the heck is the difference? Okay, so I'm going to take 30 seconds and we're going to talk a little bit about Six Sigma. Because Six Sigma, first off, Six Sigma is to take variability out of the system. So, and I'll give you an illustration of variability out of the system. This is a robotic golf machine, I guess. And this is how they test clubs, and this is how they test various balls and various parts of the golfing system. But one of the, I got something that says I got poor quality. Let's hope not. I'm going to keep going. So you've got You got this golf machine out there, and you put the same club in its hands or in its clamps or whatever, and you roll the ball down through there, and it hits the golf ball. And it's supposed to hit it exactly the same way every time. Well, when you talk about variability, are all those golf balls going to land right on top of one another and all come to rest in exactly the same place? I couldn't hear you, but the answer is no. They're going to have certain things that cause variability. And those will be wind and humidity and temperature and some other things that are associated with the machine, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So in order to test these, we're talking about taking variability out of the system. So what could you do to eliminate those variables? I know you're thinking about this. Hey, let's take it inside. Oh, now we've gotten rid of all those variables. So are all these balls, and this is actually hitting into the screen, but you can actually do it in a warehouse type area. But one of the things that, okay, so what's your variation now? You've certainly decreased your variability, but now you've got lubrication problems or lubrication sensitivity of the system. Maybe you've got a power supply to the machine. Maybe you've got a little bit different golf ball. So everything's not going to land on itself, but you have removed variability out of the system, and that, in a nutshell, is Six Sigma. So, but we didn't come here to talk about Six Sigma, so let's talk about kind of the father of lean. Oh my goodness, look at that poor guy. He's worse off than the guy that's presenting today. His name is Taiichi Ohno, and he is worse off because I think he passed away in 1990. But Taiichi Ohno is a wonderful, he could see things well, and I'll talk about his Ohno circle here in a minute. But he came to the United States from Japan, and he went to a supermarket. And the supermarket, he's walking along, and he says, hey, when they run out of a certain grocery type, then they fill it back in. It's a pull system, a lean pull system. And so that's really where lean started. Now, Taiichi Ohno was important for a couple of other reasons. He came up with the Ohno circle, and if you become a lean person, you're going to go to Gemba. Gemba is the real place, and you're going to stand around, and you are going to become part of the scenery, and you will then get to watch what is actually going on with the process and not what it looks like on a piece of paper in your office. He also came up with something called 5Y. And that's a root cause system out there. But let's go back to the grocery for a second. And I was just amazed as I started thinking back on this. Back in 1977 or 78, we had somebody that walked down the aisle, one of our management team, and plugged something into something that looked really strange. It looked like a great big calculator or a computer, and they would punch in the keys on the identifying code for groceries, and then we'd take it into the office and we'd put it in this cradle with the receiver there and hit a button, and it'd make all these, the strange sounds that some of you have heard and many of you have not heard, that has the handshake between two computers. And the bottom line was, that was how we ordered groceries, and they showed up a couple of days later, and we put them out on the shelves. Now we've made some steps ahead of that right now, because every time either you take out your phone and you use a scanning program at Sam's or at any place to scan in your items, or you go through a self-checkout, you're going to scan that, or you're going to scan it if you have a normal person checking things out. Well, hey, you don't even have to go count what's on the shelf unless you're doing kind of an annual inventory or whatever. It says, okay, we had 16 of these, we sold 8 of them, and we need to order 8, or we need to order some more. So that's pulling through the system, and that's just kind of the way it works right now. So let's talk about somebody that does lean really well. And one of the questions, oh no, I moved the pointer. One of the questions is I beg your pardon. One of the companies that does really well is Dell Computer. And Dell is, if you go out and you look at lean and you look at a pull system, then you're going to come up with Dell Computer. Well, one of the questions I like to ask my students is, who is the ultimate puller for a product in a pull system or in a lean system? Well, the ultimate puller is the customer. So what you do is you call up lean, or you call up Dell, or you go online, and they don't have a lot of inventory because they build to order. And really, you are now the customer, and you are the ultimate puller, and they don't do anything until you call them up or send in an order through the internet to start working on the computer. And I've got a little bit of a shout out to a lady named Jenny Noel, because I found her presentation on the internet, and she did a nice job with that. So the customer's the ultimate puller, and nothing happens until the customer orders the computer. So now they've got minimal finished goods, and they've got minimal raw materials because they use something called just-in-time. And we'll talk about just-in-time here in just a second. But so here comes the order in, and they say, hey, we've got an order. So I'm going to talk a little bit later on about some of the quality that comes out of this. But they don't have any raw materials. They don't have any finished goods, because when your computer's done, hey, they send it to you. And that's the end of it. So how big a warehouse do they need? Not terribly big. But they also do something like what parents ought to do if you go to Baskin-Robbins. They kind of limit your choices. You don't walk in there with a child and say, which one, what do you want? You say, do you want strawberry? Do you want vanilla? Or do you want chocolate? Because if you give them 31 choices, you'll be there for a while. Now, that isn't Dell's idea, but it's the way they go through things, because they are not going to be all things to all people. They are going to give you the most popular choices to build your computer, but they're not going to have a whole lot of different choices out there. So I actually went out while I was building this, and I went through the process of ordering a computer. Now, I didn't order one because I have a Dell computer, because I love the way they do business. But they limited what kind of storage space you had. They limited the speed, the size of the screen, the chip type. They limited those things down to something they could reasonably take care of. So they're not trying to be all things to all people. And now we're talking a little bit of just-in-time inventory, because when they get the order, they order the parts to start your computer. So I'm going to take you back to just-in-time and try to make it real for you, and we can talk a little bit more about it as we go through. And remember, I've got some of my students here, and they have limited cache capabilities, some of them. So, oh, wait a minute. I need to talk about this for a minute. Actually, I'm not going to read it to you. It goes into the production schedule. And there's no waste because they've already got the product demand as they go through this. Now, let's talk about Sam's Club and let's talk about just in time. Now, when you go to Sam's Club, you are doing batch purchasing. You can't get a single roll of paper towels. You have to get, I think the last time I looked, you got to get 18 rolls of paper towels. But why do you want 18 rolls of paper? Why would you go and get 18 rolls of paper towels? And by the way, I do buy some things from Sam's, but not everything. I mean, I've got something out right now at the house. I've got bucket o' mustard. I mean, I've got enough mustard to last me for the rest of my life. So I'm not much on bucket o' mustard, but I do buy some paper towels from these people. And you'll hear me talk about coffee in a little bit. But Sam's is the antithesis of just in time. But you get a savings because you get volume discounts. It's going to cost you less money to purchase this. But what other things does it cost you in order to keep these 17 rolls of paper towels that you don't need? It costs you space. It costs you money because you, instead of buying, and I'm going to put some notional numbers on it. Instead of buying a $2 roll of paper towels, you're now going to pay $18 for your paper towels. So for some of my students, they're a little bit cash strapped, so they don't need those 17 other rolls of paper towels. So it's also going to cost you to put it in some kind of storage space. Now, in industry or an office environment, you've probably got a closet or you've got a big storeroom where you can put this stuff. But in the house, you now need to have some place to put all these 17 extra rolls of paper towels. So it kind of brings me down to where we discuss holding costs. So if you're holding, and I'll just use the paper towels, we use the value of that inventory, and I'm going to go back and tell you a story about a place I used to work. But we use 25% value, the value of that inventory. So if I had $20 worth of inventory, it's going to cost me $5 to store that in moving it around and giving up floor space for it and tied up cash. So it's going to cost you 25% of the value. Now, okay, a roll of paper towels or a bunch of paper towels, not a big deal, right? But it's real money. I worked for a company one time and we just went to the storerooms. Actually, a friend of mine headed up this project, went to a storeroom, the various storerooms for all of the parts for the machinery out there, because I got a maintenance background, and we took that down from $175 million down to $80 million for the values in those storerooms. Now, if I can do the math right, that's $90 million, and you can take 25% of that, but it's somewhere north of $20 million savings out there. And the only thing that they looked at was dead stock and slow-moving stock. So if we would have been able to take it to the next iteration, we would have even fixed that. So okay, Sam's is not just in time, but this place is just in time. And it's Kroger's. Now, you can go buy 1 or 2 rolls of paper towels at Kroger's. Piece of cake. They want. Now, are you going to pay more for them? Absolutely. And you're going to have to drive there multiple times. So now you've got gasoline to drive there. You've got, and some of this ordering costs, we'll talk about that in just a second. But it costs you time and money, because those paper towels are going to cost a lot more if you go and buy them in the single serving size, if you will.
Now I'm going to be buying Starbucks too, because it's right beside it.
Well, yeah. Oh, Mindy points out that we have Starbucks there. So I didn't even notice that. But if you could go into Starbucks and quickly get your barista will build your coffee very quickly because they have a lean operation within Starbucks. So trying to throw me off, huh?
No.
I'm going to be able to go on with that. Now you've now I'm going to say one more thing about the just in time for Kroger's. Let's take it to real business. And I had a boss one time, and he said, "Man, we can go to this just in time. It's going to be," and everybody's going, "It's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's great." And what he said was, "Hey, that person that is holding inventory for you so they can deliver it to you just in time is not going to let you have this for free." I mean, this is business. So but what we've found in just-in-time inventory is you save so much in not having obsolete goods, not having to count it, not having to climb over it, that the extra cost is well within in what you will consider well done. So you go back to Dell and you say, "Hey, just-in-time purchasing, golly, this is a no-brainer. Why wouldn't everybody do this?" I mean, Dell, no finished goods, no component inventory. All they've got is just work in progress. Well, let's talk about somebody that does this real well. And I talked about the book at the front. Toyota, just-in-time purchasing. Man, they got this down to, they don't even have to consider this anymore because they've got this down. One of the other things about just-in-time, you've got to trust your supplier is going to provide you with your materials that you need, materials and components, in a timely basis. So Toyota has written the book again on, hey, let's make not only us better, but let's make our suppliers better. So, boy, they had this absolutely, completely under control. No-brainer for just-in-time purchasing, except, oops, they had, I think it was, August 1st, 2001, they have a 7.1 magnitude earthquake that hit Japan. And you might guess that it did an awful lot of damage. Well, the only challenge with just-in-time inventory is that, and you can prove me wrong on this maybe a little bit, but the last reading that I saw was that Toyota had 3 hours worth of inventory, or easy for me to say, 3 hours worth of windshields when the tsunami hit, when the earthquake hit, and that pretty well shut them down. So let's, wait a minute, maybe not. Maybe this just-in-time inventory is not the no-brainer that it always was thought to be. And actually, Toyota has gone back. You always think CEOs get paid way too much money. They've actually gone back. They don't get any easy decisions. And they've gone back to look at their inventory strategy because of this thing. They can consider it a one-off? Sure. All right, so let's talk about another disruptor in the, before I flip the slide, let's talk about another disruptor out there, and I talk about these in my change class, that may have changed up how you do just-in-time inventory. And it's called Amazon Prime. Mm-hmm. Now, what is your standard if you're going to If you're going to order something, what has become the standard now for when you get that product? Yeah, 2 days. And actually they're working on drones to deliver this stuff and everything else. So they're really pushing the time down. And then on the bottom right, we're talking about dash buttons. So now you don't have a Kanban necessarily. You pick up your bottle of Tide as you're filling your washing machine up with water and soap. And if it feels too light, hey, you push the Tide button, dash button, and 2 days later you'll get some more detergent for your, oh, looky there. Now they're really throwing off Sam's because they've got a Bounty paper towel. I actually have a daughter that lived on the second floor of an apartment and would order her cat litter because she didn't want to have to carry it up to the second floor, so the delivery man carried it up to the second floor. So a lot of different things out there, but this is really a disruptor in the world out there. And you're seeing it even now, what they close 60, 66, something like that, Sam's stores recently. Bricks and mortar have been changed by Amazon Prime out there. And so let's talk a little bit about Kanbans, because I mentioned Kanbans for a second. So let's look at Kanbans. Kanbans are merely a signal, and that signal is to replenish your inventory. And Kanbans can be an empty spot on the floor. What these guys are doing right here is they're taping off an area, and I think the orange part of that is actually the name of the area. And they'll put some kind of a holding system, or you know, it could be a rack of materials, or it could be something like this, where, and let's just say these are boxes of parts for a grill, because I just put a grill together and it had all these neat little boxes in there. And as it moves down the line, they pull the boxes off, they put them into the packing for my grill. When the front two, which is down to looks like 6 boxes, get done, they pull up the other 2 pallets of boxes, and they have empty spots, and they say, whoa, we now have a signal to fill those spots. And all it is just a signal to somebody. And it can happen in a number of ways. People can, you can hit, let's just take it back to industry for a minute. You're sitting there at your table and you're running low on components, and you hit the equivalent of a dash button, which is goes through a Wi-Fi system, gives a clue to the storeroom, and they bring you some more materials. Your Kanban is, hey, I got down to this level, I hit the button, and now they come and bring it to me. Or you can have a card that gets sent back to the storage room, and then they bring you out some more inventory. Or you can have somebody that just circles around it all day long from the storeroom and fills Kanbans out there. But I said in my my introduction to this thing that you got to have, this is a really important Kanban. Now this is, I took this the other day at my my house. Now on the right you can see what is it, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 K-cups of coffee. Well, that's my Kanban, because when I get to that level, and there's more on the other side, but when everything's empty except for that is facing me, I have about 3 days worth of coffee left. That is not as bad as 2 days, but it is approaching an emergency situation, and I have to get to Sam's to get my box of 100 K-cups of coffee. So let's move on a little bit. One of the ways that I have found lean to work really well, how are we doing on time? I guess I got about 15 minutes to get to where, and if I didn't mention it, we're going to take your questions in the chat box, and I'm only going to answer the questions that I know the answers to, so we'll put that ahead of time. So let's go back to Dell. Dell gets the order and they generate something called a service tag. And if you have a Dell computer and have called up to get a little bit of help with your computer or whatever, the first thing that they ask you is, what's your service tag number? And the neat thing about the service tag is they can go back and they can look at what components have gone on that, what your computer has. I mean, I run into this from time to time, and they go, well, and it's mainly with my iPhone. Well, what iPhone do you have? Well, I don't know. Is it a 4? Is it a 6? Is it a 6S? I just don't know. But if you give them the service tag number, wow, they can absolutely hit that dead on the money. And it ties into their quality. They put it on at the very start into something that is, we'll just say it's the case of the computer that you're going to assemble everything into, and it gives you cradle to grave information on that computer. Now, cradle to grave is from when you first get it to when you pitch it. I beg your pardon, you use electronic recycling to put it into the, take it downtown here in Fayetteville at least. And then they assess the component and the assembly quality throughout the entire lifetime of that product. When it shows up, the service tag is scanned for customer requirements, and they tie every part of that computer to that service tag, and it provides complete history and also accountability throughout the supply chain. Maybe you got a set of chips from, they brought AMD chips from AMD, and those chips all begin to fail. Well, yeah, this is like big data, and you know, it's some wonderful things out there that you can keep up with this stuff. All right, so I'm talking about quality. Now this, there you go. I was the quality manager, and you can look at the slide and determine whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. Nightmare is probably not the best word out there. So I was working at a company in electronics. We populated electronic circuit boards, and we got this one of the things that was coming along at the time was being able to read the meter remotely. You didn't have to go out and have a meter reader see what. So they had a remote system to go out and read meters. Give me 1 second. So we get this order. One of our salespeople goes out and convinces these people that we can build these things and do a great job. Well, he might have told the story because we didn't have the capability to do it, in my opinion, in the opinion of the industrial engineer and the intern industrial engineer, who is actually, to this day, is the president of a company called Frigo in Bolivia, which is the largest meat producer in the country. So, I mean, this guy was no slouch, I can tell you for sure. So we got this huge order for a component out there, and we said the only way we can come close to meeting the production, which was the industrial engineers section of this, and the quality, which was my baby, was to put in a lean line to build these things. I mean, we were ISO 9000, but we had things going all over the plant floor, and we lost things all the time. So we started a couple months prior to the order coming in, and we went to some senior leadership training, and this is where I want to put a plug in for in the state of Arkansas and in a number of other states. They have a manufacturing extension partnership that runs a Lean 101 course. And we actually have one of our instructors in the MSOM program, a guy named Mickey Yeager, that is one of the guys that does this in Arkansas. Now, I've taken that course, I think, 3 times, so it might have, some of the concepts might have taken. So anyway, so we started 2 months prior. We took all the senior leaders, about 20 of them, to this course. In fact, I think they came to the plant and did the course. But anyway, they've got a great simulation that does some wonderful things out there. So, and then we trained every person in the plant on lean operations. So, man, we got it built. We got this area, and I'll show you here, and you'll get to see in just a minute a little bit of information on this. But so we tested the line. We got the line put in. We balanced the line, which is something that you do. And we got that bad boy ready to go. And being an old military guy, I don't have any trouble getting up early in the morning. So we hit the go live date. We were starting at 5 in the morning, and boom, here we go. Now I'm gonna show. I really believe a lot in leadership. This was certainly a possible make or break for this company. And not one of the senior leadership team showed up for the kickoff. Now, what did that tell me? It didn't matter. What did it tell the people that were on that line? Oh, well, going to sleeping in a little bit more was more important. I found this absolutely amazing, and I don't suffer fools gladly. I didn't work there much longer. The line worked very well. In fact, it was a huge amount of fun because we were right there. We had a little bit of trouble snapping the boards into the carrier, so we immediately went back and got a bandsaw and cut a wooden jig, and where we could get it snapped in there. And when I got back out there, the company had sent us the people that were taking this product. So the customer had sent us a testing program. Once again, we had a failure, and I'm going to tell you about the failure. The lean line worked like a champ, but we had only been given one 486 computer, and we had all these somewhat fragile boards laying in piles down at the end of the line because the 486 computer couldn't test them fast enough. That was our bottleneck out there. Let's talk real quick about some value stream mapping. I think we're about right on time. Now, this is the way I learned this that may be different for some other folks out there. And remember that a lean system is to take waste out of your process. So you've got value-added work, which is work that adds value, and that work is really, I've always said that's what the customer will pay for. And then you've got non-value-added work, but it's necessary. And we'll say that's the admin folks, that's the sales folks, that's the maintenance folks, that's HR. And then look at that big old chunk on the outside. It's called waste. Well, that isn't good. That company's not going to stay in business for very long. So you can do some value stream mapping. And value stream mapping, and this is just a slide that I've used in class. So we've got an order comes in, and it goes here, and it sits in somebody's box, and then the shipper sends us some material, and it takes 2 days to get it there. And after you go through all this and add up the value added time, your 30-day time from order to delivery, value added time is 1 hour and 25 minutes. So you're not going to take all of this out of here, but let's talk about offices for a minute, because, and you all may have seen this before, but you have people in the office that say, I want to see it before it goes to the next person. Well, why do they want to see this thing? All it's going to do is sit in their inbox and slow things down. So they want to approve it. They want to put a set of initials on it. And you've got to have some pretty strong people in there to say, you have no need to do this. Therefore, I'm lowering your importance, at least in your mind, and we're going to get this piece of paper through here a little bit quicker. So, value stream mapping. Now, let me tell you about value stream mapping. And I wish I had a slide, or I wish I had a picture, but I did better this time. These are a bunch of sticky notes, and I actually found one stuck on something that is in a different language, so some of you can't read what it means anyway. But what the sticky notes are for is if you sit down to come up with a process, and we do this in my quality class, you're not going to get the process mapped perfectly the first time. So sticky notes are wonderful. You can actually go through, pull off a sticky note, move it over a little bit, and put in that next step. Okay, and now you can actually modify your process very quickly. I know you can do it through Visio and all that stuff, but if you're brainstorming with a bunch of people there, just stick up the sticky notes and you'll get the process down very quickly. Well, we did this when I was going through lean training, and I actually worked for an aluminum wheel manufacturer. And we went out and we started putting the sticky notes on there, and then we'd forget parts and we'd put all of them on there. And we got this area, and I think it was on a whiteboard that we put all the sticky notes on there. And somebody took a black marker, put a big circle around it, and the area where, and it just makes it so obvious, the area where the quality of the product was being determined was actually up on the casting deck. The casting deck, nobody wanted to work on the casting deck because in the summer it was 140 degrees up there. And in the winter it was, I will say it was 120 degrees up there. It was a high enough temperature that it shut down my iPhone when I went up there to work with some people. So anyway, this black area where all the quality is, or a lot of the quality is determined on our aluminum wheels, was all being done by temporary employees from a temporary agency that they had the opportunity to change the settings on the casting machines and everything else. And we said, hey, this is our people that don't want to be here or are trying to get something, but these are certainly not our best and brightest people, and they're making the decision on quality. So that's one of the things about looking at some value stream mapping out there. There was something else I was going to say about that, but I may have lost my mind. Oh, the other thing is, now these people are pulling these wheels out of, then they're molten, almost molten hot, and they're grabbing them with a pair of very long channel locks, swinging them up on something. Now, I couldn't do that for 30 minutes. We had these guys doing 3 12s and a 6. Now, what was the quality? 3 12-hour days and a 6-hour day. This place had huge scrap challenges. All right, let me see, it's 45. So we're going to go real close, real fast now. Can't have, oh, wait a minute. That seems to be a problem, doesn't it? This is real world here, boys and girls. This is a storeroom. I just can't go fast over this slide. This is a storeroom at a place that I worked at one time. And first off, they used a whole bunch of these shelves that, you know, they wouldn't hold me. And they're putting these big old engines on, or motors on these things. And, you know, you're sitting in the middle of that room and you're trying to get something off of a shelf and it decides to domino on top of you. One of the things about 5S is a place for everything and everything in its place. Well, everything may have had a place, but it ain't there right now for sure. So 5S, sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain. Now the hardest part of that is right down here, sustain. You get it all fixed, and then it goes away. And the sixth S you get is safety out there. So sort, very quickly. Sort is getting rid of all the junk that you have around. Choose carefully who you select to do this because pack rats do not sort well. Is everything here? I don't know. But when I was in the Air Force, we had to have something that was either shadow boarded or that showed that everything was there, because if you leave a tool in an intake for an engine on a jet aircraft, you buy yourself a new jet engine, because when you run up the engine, it sucks it down the engine and destroys a lot of things. You can see, hey, in a shadow board, something's missing right there. Where is the leak, the grease leak on this piece of machinery? I have no idea, but if you clean it up, you can see exactly where it is. And you clean up not just when the visitors are coming, you clean it up all the time. Now, shine continued. I had a maintenance manager, and I was trying to get him to do 5S with all of his people. And all his people had come see him. This was his office. Now, how am I going to drive 5S when you have an office that looks like this? Standardize the markings on a lot of things, and I'm going to speed up here. And sustain. When we put the lean line in at the electronics manufacturing place, we freed up floor space that was about 30 by 60. And it was wonderful. And the president of the company came in and he says, if I catch anyone putting anything in this area, it will be bad. Now, I dare say that that area is so full now, it was probably very full after 6 months, because sustain is the hardest thing to do. But keeping things clean, my last point is, it takes work, but we have a company near here, Gates Rubber, that builds belts. And, you know, there's nothing like little chunks of rubber to cause you all kinds of heartache out there. Well, that place, I went over and toured the plant. That place was so clean you could eat off the floor. And with that, I mean, I got more stories to tell forever, and if I sounded like a downer, I'm sorry. You learn from good things and you learn from bad things out there, but keep learning about lean, because lean's here, and it's just going to be increased even more as technology presses forward. So Mindy, how do I get out of it? Oh, looky there.
Yeah.
All right, so
Click right here.
I'm going to click over here. This is the chat box. Let me see. I don't have any questions yet. So send me a question. While you're putting together your question, let me tell you real quick. that, and Mindy has already cautioned me multiple times, this is to enhance your knowledge. It is not something to be a commercial for the course. So but we do have a new Lean Six Sigma course out there, and people think they're done, they're leaving the session. Oh no. We've got a Lean Six Sigma course out there. In fact, one of the attendees is one of my fellow instructors, and I'm sure she has got her head in her hands for what I have said during this system. So anyway, I'll tell you another story, and let's just talk about a place for everything and everything in its place, and choosing the person that does your sort. I was standing around talking with a plant manager for this company that I worked for, and there was another plant shutting down. The maintenance manager took, and I think it was two, but I'm not going to embellish, so I'll say it's one semi-trailer to this other plant that was shutting down, and loaded it with parts. And my question to the plant manager, and the maintenance manager was standing there, I said, why would you do that? Well, you never know when you might need something. That is not the person you use to go sort. So, and I guess the last story, I'll wait. I tell you what, you've been beat up long enough. It's already to 52. I don't see anything in the chat box. Did I cover it so well that you don't want to ask me any questions? Well, okay. With that, I thank you for being here. I think if you have friends that you want to see this, then certainly go out, and if you reach out to Mindy, she will have a recording of this. And hey, it's been a pleasure. You guys have a great rest of the day, and go do something lean.
Yes, and we will send an email in a few days once the video is ready, but you can always view a video from a previous webinar and find out information from an upcoming webinar on our MSOM Lunch and Learn webinar homepage, so I can send out that link as well. And then if questions come up after you leave the session, you can email those to me if you're interested in the class Jim mentioned that covers Lean Six Sigma, or the MSOM program, or the graduate certificate in project management, any of those things. You can all just email me those questions. If you've got a question about Lean for Jim or about this presentation, you can also send that to me, and I can pass it on to him. My email address you should all have, but it's my last name. It's Hunthrop, HUNTHROP@uark.edu. And thanks again for joining us today. We'll hang out for a little bit longer in case questions do pop up in the chat box. Otherwise, just send them our way via email.